Hello and welcome to 1111 with Kirsty Olive. I'm going to be chatting to you today about anxiety, and the reason I wanted to do an episode on this is I held a 5-day retreat recently. It was like an online soul work retreat, and a big theme that came up throughout, whenever I asked, like, what is your biggest challenge right now? Like, what is it that you're struggling with? What is it that you need me to support you with? The biggest reoccurring theme throughout was that people were suffering with so much anxiety and they wanted tips, techniques, practices, just anything to help support them, really. So I done a poll actually on my Instagram story asking, like, from a wider audience. I think my retreat was filled with 250 women, but I wanted to know from a wider audience, is everybody else experiencing the same? So I done a little poll on my Instagram asking, like, are you suffering with anxiety? What level is your anxiety at right now? Do you have any techniques or tips or practices that you use to manage your anxiety? And also I asked, do you feel like you have any support to support you right now with your anxiety? And the responses I got, I was so overwhelmed at how many people actually took part in the poll, and at how many people felt that, like, yes, they are experiencing heightened levels of anxiety at the moment, and a lot of people felt as if they just didn't have the support there, or they didn't have the right tools or practices to help support them. And that really it really affected me just to even realize how many people are suffering with this, because even though my own anxiety right now is very manageable, that's because I have all of these tools, all of these systems, a support network in place so that I can manage it, and that's through years of dealing with anxiety. It's gotten to a stage now where it's very manageable for me, but it wasn't always the case. I used to suffer with several panic attacks a day. I used to suffer with disassociation. Just I was full of anxiety, couldn't really go anywhere on my own, couldn't do anything on my own. I'd be completely overwhelmed, sometimes up to 10 panic attacks a day, and now thankfully that's a thing of the past for me. But as I said, that's because I have the right tools and stuff. So I want to share some stuff with you that really, really helped me. And there's so much out there, and like what I find is that it's really about trying something, and seeing the effect that it has on you personally, because there was so much stuff that I was recommended over the years that just didn't really help me at all, and then there was other things that I was recommended that were just absolutely life-changing. So I'm going to share a few of the things that I found most beneficial and things that I still do to this day, and give them a try, see if they work for you. I'll also as well point you afterwards to some additional resources to help you with that. So the first thing I actually want to share with you is a piece of advice that I was actually given by a friend who I worked with at the time, and this is when I was really, really suffering the most. And a friend in work, she really helped me, really supported me, and she gave me probably the best piece of advice that I've ever been given. And now, even though I don't suffer with my anxiety as much, I still actually use this piece of advice, but in different situations. And the reason kind of that she gave me this piece of advice in the first place was because, I was living in Ireland on my own at the time. So like I had to show up for work. I had to pay the bills. I was so fearful of possibly losing my job, or, not being able to afford my rent if I couldn't go to work. So I was like, just whatever happens, no matter how much anxiety I'm feeling, even if I'm crying in the toilets all day at work, even if I'm having a panic attack on the way to work, I was like, I just have to get there. Like, I have to go to work. And it was a really big fear for me that I wouldn't be able to get to work. And sometimes what would happen is I'd wake up in the morning and the thought of, first of all, having to like get dressed and make myself presentable when I was so exhausted and my mind was just overflowing, and you know, it was awful. Also suffering with disassociation, but then also the thought of actually having to get to work. So for anybody who's not familiar, so I'm living in Dublin and the bus routes over here are just really unusual. It's not like that over in the UK. Like over in the UK, you can just get direct buses in every direction from one place to another. But in Dublin, there's kind of buses that go from the city centre to like an outer circle. But there's no real buses that go in between, yeah, like that crisscross to different areas. So for me to get to work at this point, if I wanted to get public transport, I would have had to get one bus into the city centre and then get a second bus from the city centre back out, but in a different direction. And the traffic in Dublin is just mental. Yeah, especially at that time in the morning. I was working a 9 to 5. The traffic was just crazy. Also as well, like the thought of actually being on a bus surrounded by other people was like far too much for me, especially considering like the buses at that time in the morning, often they'd be so busy that they just drive right by you anyway, you know. So that's how full the buses would actually be, and the thought of that was just too much for me. And I loved walking, so I'd walk to and from work, which is about a 50-minute walk each way. But at this time my anxiety was so bad that the thought of just like walking down the road, walking down the canal, like walking outside for 45 to 50 minutes, like the thought of that was so paralyzing and so overwhelming. And then the thoughts of, okay, at the end of that walk, I then have to go into work and speak to customers on the phone. I have to smile. People will ask like, oh, hi Kirsty, how are you? They'll want to talk to me. They'll want to engage me. And I just wanted to be left alone. I just wanted to hide in a corner and not have to face anyone, you know, maybe get given like a piece of admin work where I don't have to see or talk to anybody. So like often I'd get up in the morning and the thought of like all of these steps throughout the day, like all of these different steps, and the thought of being at my desk in work all day, then having to get home, trying to make it through the day without having a panic attack or crying. Like the thought of all of that was so overwhelming that I often end up having a panic attack before even like brushing my teeth in the morning, before even getting dressed, because thinking about how am I going to make it to the end of the day was just, it was just far too much for me to handle. And I discussed this with my friend who I worked with, who, as I said, was an absolute godsend to me. And she gave me this piece of advice, okay, and it has been incredible for me, and it's so simple but so powerful. And she told me, instead of thinking about the day ahead, instead of thinking about like having to get to work, having to get through the day at work, then having to come home and make dinner, just think about the next step in front of you. So instead of even thinking about, oh, I have to get dressed and leave the house to get to work, just think, okay, I have to brush my teeth. So then you go down, you brush your teeth. Okay, now I have to wash my face. Okay, so now you wash your face. Okay, now just brush your hair, you know, and take it literally step by step at a time. And I do this for everything. Okay, just put your socks on, put your socks on. Okay, put your pants on, put your pants on. Okay, just go to the front door and open the front door instead of thinking about going all the way to work. Okay, just walk to the end of the street. All you're doing is walking to the end of the street, you know. And I'd just segment my day like this and just think about the next step, which sounds a little bit like, oh my God, isn't that a lot? But for anybody who really is suffering with deep anxiety and maybe finding things a little bit too overwhelming, or finding that like they have so much going on and so much to do, or maybe the thought of doing something is so paralyzing that they end up having a panic attack or having anxiety. This can honestly be so incredible and helpful. This is actually what was able to mobilize me, because I went through a stage where I was just so paralyzed by panic attacks that, you know, I might not even make it into work because I'd have several panic attacks on the way to work, and I'd just have to come back home because I'd be so, you know, just in such a bad way. And it was because I was thinking about the day ahead. But when I began to really just like segment my day into the smallest possible parts, it's like I stopped having all of those thoughts of like, oh, what if I cry at my desk? What if I cry on the phone to a customer? What if I have a panic attack in work and everybody's around me? You know, just all of those thoughts that normally I would have, I wasn't having them anymore, because I was just thinking like, okay, I'm just going to the end of the street, you know? And I always had it in my head that like, okay, well, say if I got to the end of the street and it all became too much for me, or I started feeling like I was going to panic, then okay, I can just turn around and go back home. So like, I always had it in my head that if you do the next step, if you try the next step and it all becomes overwhelming, you can just dial it back one step and then dial it back another step until you're feeling safe again, until you're feeling less overwhelmed. And that, honestly, like, it's a piece of advice that it was given to me by a friend. And I was like, why on earth hasn't like my counselor or anyone told me this, you know? Because I was going to see, a therapist I was going to see at the time. And I was like, why didn't she tell me this? Like, this piece of advice has been so amazing for me, you know? Like, why isn't this the first thing really that you're told when you're experiencing, you know, such anxiety? Because like, usually with anxiety, it's like in anticipation or fear of what might happen, you know, like that fear of the future, or you know, sometimes like a fear of being perceived a certain way, a fear of like what might happen in the day, a fear of like being socially awkward, or, you know, a fear of a future conversation where it might be awkward, you know, all of those things. So like, when you begin to be able to take yourself like out of that almost, and just like forget what your plan is for the day, and be like, okay, I just need to put my socks on, that's it. I just need to put my pants on, that's it. Not only does it really like help to take you out of that fear, but it also brings you into the present moment. You're not like thinking far enough into the future to start panicking as much and to have as much anxiety. You're literally just focusing on the task that you're doing right now and the next one step in front of you, instead of thinking about the next 100 steps, or even the next 10 steps, or even the next 5 steps. Because when you have anxiety, thinking of that can get really, really overwhelming very fast. So give it a try, like try thinking about that. And even if your anxiety maybe like isn't as severe at the moment as what I was just describing in myself, like it's still an amazing little tool to get used to using and to bring into your life, you know? Like, as I said, my anxiety now, like, it's pretty much gone, you know? Like, there might be certain days, like maybe if I haven't slept well for a few nights, you know, my anxiety might feel a little bit higher in the morning, or sometimes actually, like, because of the pandemic, like with the masks and everything like that, if I'm in, like, if I was in a big shop and I had a mask on, my anxiety, you know, I'd get a little bit flustered and stuff. But apart from that, like, mine is very almost non-existent now, you know, because I have it. I've completely changed my life around, you know, like not just using tools like this, but in so many ways my life is just so different now. But even still, I still use this for everything. So for example, recently, and this is something that I swore I wasn't going to do, like when I left the corporate world to start my own business, I swore that I was going to be one of these people who I'm going to be completely on top of my expenses and my invoicing and receipts all of the time. I'm not going to let them build up. I'm going to do them like every week. But in reality, that just didn't happen. And I did let them build up until I had a drawer bulging of like expense receipts, invoice receipts, all sorts. And the thought actually of tackling that just seemed to be really overwhelming for me. And seemed to be like, oh my goodness, how am I going to get all of this done? To the point where I wasn't getting any of it done because the thought of doing all of it was so overwhelming. So like you can see how, even though this isn't like an anxiety, it's still kind of the same idea. The thought of doing it was so overwhelming. So what I actually did was, you know, the same kind of technique. Like, okay, so instead of thinking about like all that you have to do, just do one step, you know. And I ended up getting one step done. Like say for example, my physical expense receipts, and I got that done in one Monday, and then I was like, well, that was great, like that was amazing. It didn't even take me long at all, and I feel like I've achieved something by getting that done. So what I actually ended up doing was scheduling then each Monday for the next couple of weeks, scheduling, that's not a word, scheduling a small little piece of my admin expense bookkeeping reports to do, so that by the end of a few weeks I had gotten it done just by like doing it one step at a time and not thinking about the whole thing, and breaking it down, you know. But I also use this like when it comes to, for example, like the cleaning in the house or something. Like, you know, sometimes if you've had a busy couple of days and there's a lot to get done, especially if you do like crafts or if you're very creative, which I am. So my house, sometimes if I get like on a creative streak making things, I can leave a bit of a whirlwind of different, you know, craft supplies around. And sometimes like it can be a little bit overwhelming, thinking like, oh my god, like, you know, I need to do the washing, I need to do the bathroom, I need to do the garden, I wanted to paint. But instead of like thinking of all of that, because like for me, I'm not one of those people who just loves to clean all of the time. I have definitely changed it around and I do enjoy it more now. But it's still like a difficult thing for me to motivate myself to do. So I actually just use the same technique and be like, okay, instead of thinking about like all of the chores that I have to do today, I'm just going to get up and fold the washing, you know. And quite often what happens is I'll get up and I'll fold the washing, but then by the time I finished folding that, I'll be like, okay, now I'm going to put another wash on. And before you know it, like, because you're only thinking about the next step, because you're only thinking about a small step in front of you, you get it all done. Like, you end up getting it all done anyway, even though you didn't plan to, but you're just so much less stressed and have a much better time doing it. So that piece of advice, like, honestly, it's so small, but try and apply it to your life if you're suffering with anxiety in any way at the moment, and just see how it helps you, see if it works for you or not. And then something else actually that I wanted to share with you, and this is one that probably people are a lot more familiar with, but I wanted to delve a little bit deeper into the why of it. So I'm sure, like, unless you've been kind of living under a rock, I'm sure most people who would be listening to my podcast have heard of, like, think of 3 things every day that you're grateful for. You know, like, gratitude it's all over social media, it's in all of those different TED Talks, and it's in a lot of different books. So it's a big thing, Think of 3 things every day that you're grateful for and how much gratitude can do for you. But one thing that I find is a lot of times we'll hear people talking about stuff like this and not really understand the true lasting impact that it can have on you. And therefore we'll think like that maybe it's insignificant or it's not that powerful and we'll not do it, or we'll go through it quite robotically. Yeah, so just kind of quickly listing off 3 things. But I want to share with you my experience with gratitude and how it really helped me. And this would be around the same time that I was mentioning before. So the time in my life where, you know, I was having the most panic attacks, suffering with chronic pain, disassociation. And my counsellor one day asked me to like think of 3 things that I was grateful for when I was sitting in her office. And I was so unhappy at this point that I was like, I just can't think of anything. I was like, I'm just so miserable that I just can't think of anything. And like now when I look back, I'm like, of course there is things to be grateful for, you know. My loved ones, even though they weren't in the same country as me, like I was still grateful for them, you know. The fact that I had a roof over my head, I was grateful for that. But sometimes when you're suffering and you're really low or suffering with such high anxiety, it can be really hard to get into that mindset and think of things that you're grateful for. So it's not always as simple as just listing off 3 things. And it's like, if you're not like truly feeling it in that moment, sometimes as well, if it's a bit forced, it just doesn't have the right effect on you. So I was like sitting there and I was like, I'm just grateful for nothing. I was like, I just hate my life at the moment. I'm so exhausted. I'm so tired of this. I'm honestly just not grateful for anything. And she said to me, she was like, okay, look, we're going to finish up now, but before you come back next week, I want you to just try and think of 3 things that you're grateful for. So I left her office, walked home, and the entire way home, again, her office was next to where I worked, so it was about a 45 to 50 minute walk home. And the entire walk home, you know, like I had my hood up, my head down, just like rushing along as fast as I could, to the point where like when I'd get home, I'd be like sweating under my coat and, you know, puffing out of breath because I just wanted to get home so fast. And so the full time I was like, just get home. And the second I got in the door, I went like, because obviously counselling and therapy is very intense, you know, like it's very deep and very triggering sometimes. And I had been at work, so I was just absolutely drained and exhausted. And as I was coming into the door, I was thinking like, oh, I just want to get a cup of tea and get into bed, yeah. And I went into the kitchen, made myself a cup of peppermint tea, and went upstairs, switched the light off. It was only about 7 p.m, but even still, switched the light off, pulled the curtains across, got my pajamas on and got straight into bed with a cup of peppermint tea, switched my Himalayan salt lamp on, and I just lay there like sat there having a cup of tea in bed, you know, very low lighting to kind of shut off any stimulation for me and help me to calm a little bit. And like my full body, like when I was in bed in my pajamas with my little lamp on and had a sup of the tea, it's like my full body just like let out this sigh of relief, you know, to just be like, like finally I can relax somewhat. Finally, like I can begin to feel a bit safe and to unwind. And I realised in that moment that I was grateful for my peppermint tea. And I was like, oh, this is the thing. Like all the way home, I was like, just get me into bed with my cup of tea. I just want to have a cup of tea, get into bed. Because for me, like a cup of nice warm peppermint tea was something that was just very, very grounding. You know, and really helped with my disassociation, really helped to kind of bring me back into the body, you know, because when you have a hot liquid going in down your throat and you can feel it going down, like it's a very kind of grounding feeling. but also just the taste of the peppermint and holding the hot cup in my hand and the smell of it. Really just bringing me back into my senses and into my body, which is exactly what I needed. And I realized that, like, okay, I'm grateful for my cup of peppermint tea, you know. And then I got a bit upset because I was like, oh, my life is so bad that I can't think of anything other than a cup of tea that I'm grateful for. Like, how pathetic is that? But then I was like, no, I was like, at least I'm grateful for something. At least I have something. Like, if the only good part of my day is having a cup of peppermint tea, then I'm going to make this the best part of my day. Like, if this is the only good thing that I have in my life at the moment, then I'm going to go online and I'm going to order like some really nice, like loose leaf, organic peppermint tea, maybe some other flavors, and buy a tea strainer. And I'm just going to make it like an ordeal, you know, instead of just kind of throwing in like a regular peppermint tea bag and drinking it down quickly. I'm going to really put my intention into this and really take every moment to savor it, because you could drink a cup of tea in 2 minutes without kind of bringing your awareness to it. But I thought, if it's the only good thing in my day, if it's the only thing I'm grateful for, then I'm going to drag this out and make it into like a 30-minute experience, you know. So I ordered some gorgeous different teas online, some peppermint, some raspberry leaf, a few different ones. And I began to, like, every day I'd get in from work and I'd be thinking all day, kind of whenever I began to feel too stressed or like as if I was going to have a panic attack, I'd begin thinking like, okay, what type of tea am I going to have when I get home? Like, how many hours is it until my cup of tea? Okay, so I think I'm going to have a peppermint today, or I might have peppermint but mix it in with a bit of this loose leaf. Do you know, like, I'm really thinking about it a lot. And then I'd get home, straight in the door, put my salt lamp on, pull the curtains across, get my pajamas on, and I'd go downstairs and like I'd spend a while looking through the teas, and I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna have this one. You know, I'd really slowly brew it, and like I'd stand there while the strain I was in, and I'd be like kind of just like smelling it and being present, really, which was something that was a big deal for me, to be able to be present. And then I'd take it up into my room, I'd get into bed, I'd hold the cup under my face and take nice, like, slow, deep inhales. I'd savor every single sip, you know, like really slow, deliberate sips, feeling the warmth of the liquid in my throat, noticing all of the flavors, all of the aromas, and really taking my time with it. And it began to, like, I was like, this is the best part of my day. Like, it began to be the thing that I looked forward to each day. So as I said, I made it into this like big ordeal. And it seems like something that, you know, like, is so small, and it seems like something that kind of, it might be insignificant, but for me, having like even one thing in my day that I could really enjoy and really look forward to, even if the rest of my day was absolutely shit, like the fact that I had one thing that I just was so grateful for, the fact that I had one thing that I could like hold on to, that I, like, nobody could take away from me, you know. It was just really massive for me in changing like my mindset, because not only did it help me to realize that like I did have something to be grateful for, and it helped me to get through the work day, because I'd be like, oh, I can't wait to go home and have this cup of tea, and I'd think about that, the thing that I was grateful for, and how I could improve that experience, rather than thinking about all of the things that I hated. And eventually over time, I began to realize like more stuff that I was grateful for, you know, like, because I was bringing in and really absorbing myself in the gratitude and experience of having a cup of tea. I began to notice more things that I was really grateful for. and it kind of like began to snowball. And like now I could list hundreds of things that I'm grateful for right off the bat and really truly feel them in my heart, you know. But back then it was really difficult for me, but that was kind of like the stepping stone to be able to feel that again, and to be able to realize like that actually there is good things in life, even though I haven't felt them in a while, even though I haven't seen them in a while. Having that experience and having that gratitude and experience around making the best part of my day my cup of tea really allowed me to open myself up to that, which was again something else that like is really small but really powerful. You know, it just helps to remind us that even when we feel our worst, even when we're in the depths of anxiety, like if we can even find like one thing to be grateful for, it's almost like an anchor, you know, like it gives you hope to be like, well, there is something for me to look forward to in my life, you know, like there is something here for me. And it can just be so powerful. So if you don't like consciously practice gratitude, make it a daily habit, you know, and like you can do it in the way that everyone does it, like list 3 things that you're grateful for each day. But see if you can take it a step further like I did and really like bring yourself into that experience, because it's easy to just sometimes just roll 3 things off the tongue. But when you can allow yourself to really feel it and to really lean into that gratitude, like I made that cup of tea the highlight of my day. And it grew and grew and grew into this just beautiful, magical experience for me. So if you can begin to really lean into that gratitude and make it a big part of your day, even if it's only for 20 minutes, you know, even if it's only for 5 minutes. For example, like if you're grateful for, let's just pick a family member. If you're grateful for your nana or your granda or something like that, and you're feeling like full of anxiety and you're feeling really down and overwhelmed, think of what you're grateful for. And if the answer, for example, is I'm grateful for my nana, then why not ring your nana and have a chat for 10-20 minutes, because you'll probably be feeling more full with love and happy and relaxed after the fact, just like what I used to do with my cup of tea. So try and bring that into your life. It's just another little small kind of tip from me, but sharing my personal experience with it. And as I said, it's something that I still do to this day. I still consciously think of things every single day that I'm grateful for, and try and do more of that, try and experience more of that, and really bring myself into that. There's so many other things, you know, like there's so many powerful tools, resources, practices out there in the world to help with anxiety, but those are just 2 that like they're so practical, you know, like you don't have to stop and like sit and maybe do like a meditation or something, you know, like they are practical tools that you can actually use to help you get through the day, if that makes sense. When, for me anyway, like if my anxiety was really bad, like that would be the challenge for me, would be like just getting through the day. And I feel like those 2 tools are just so simple, but they can really help with that in a massive way. But they can also help to change your mindset and bring you really into the present moment and into what you're doing. So I'd love if you give one or both of them a try. Again, like see if they work for you. They might not, but there's no harm in trying it, you know. And as well, I want to do like a breath work with you now, just for a few minutes. This is a breath work that I do every single day. I usually do it in the morning and also before bed. And it's actually something that I learned from a counsellor who I was going to a few years ago. But he was really like, he did like a lot of holistic stuff as well. And this like rapid eye movement therapy. Like, he did so much. It was really, really cool actually, and really, really helped me. But he taught me this breath, and it wasn't until later when I went on to study and become a teacher of, you know, pranayama and yoga, that I began to know like the science and the theory behind this type of breath and why it was so powerful. But he taught it to me originally just by getting me to do it every time I went, and it was just, the effect that it has on me was really, really profound. And the reason for that is that it helps to switch off your fight, flight, freeze response. So it helps to relax your nervous system and to bring you into that kind of rest and digest state, rather than a state of like frenzy, a state of high alert, which is usually what we're in, especially when we're suffering with anxiety. So it helps to switch that off, helps to regulate the nervous system, but also as well, it can help to release emotions. It can help us to kind of process or release any tension from the body and any emotions that are stuck. And you can do this, like, you know, say for example, you could do 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes at the night. But often when we're trying to get into a new routine of doing a breath work as well, like sometimes 10 minutes we might get bored, our mind might wander, we might not be able to do it for 10 minutes. If that does happen, try just doing it for 5 minutes. And if you still find that it's too difficult for you to sit for 5 minutes, do it for 1 minute. Like, it's better to do it for 1 minute every day than to say do it for 10 minutes once a week. You know, so even if you can do it for 1 minute once a day, because what happens is if you can sit down at a kind of regular time every single day for 1 minute to do this, before you know it, like, it becomes easier and easier for you to sit down and to do it for 1 minute. And before you know it, in a couple of weeks, you might be doing it for 2 minutes. Then you might be doing it for 3 minutes, and you can build it up that way, you know. So don't feel as if you have to jump in and do 10 minutes straight away, because building new habits can be difficult. And I don't want you to try and do 10 minutes twice a day and then give up because it's boring or because you're not enjoying it. So start small and build it up. And just in case I forget, actually, by the time we finish the breath work, because we might be too relaxed by then, if you want any additional resources, I have set up on my website, which is www.kirstyolive.com. If you go onto my website, you'll see on the home page there's a little button for anxiety resources. I might move that onto a certain page, but either way, just look for, on my home page or on the menu, just look for the button that says anxiety resources. And if you click into that, I've set up a mailing list specifically for this purpose. If you click into that, enter your name and email and register for that email mailing list, I will send you regular resources into your inbox a couple of times a week with some new just tips, techniques, mini practices, sometimes some longer practices, maybe some different books that I can refer you to, different resources on the internet, whatever I can to help. So if you want to sign up for that, go to www.kirstyolive.com and click on anxiety resources and enter your details. Completely free, like, and you can unsubscribe at any time if you're not benefiting or if you're not enjoying it. But I would like to continue to support you if you are suffering with anxiety at this time, so feel free to sign up. But for the next couple of minutes, I want you to get into a comfortable position where your spine is actually as straight as possible. So I want you to push your shoulders back. Make sure that your shoulders aren't hunched forward. And just lengthen up through the crown of the head. So as if you're trying to stretch the spine all the way from the tail, all the way up to the crown of the head. And close your eyes and just send your awareness inwards. Bring your awareness to your breath. Noticing where can you feel the breath within the body. That coolness and the tickle as the breath enters in through the nostrils. That expansion in the chest and in the lungs. And the gentle contraction as the air travels back up and out. And now I want you to place your right hand on the area below your navel. So kind of like on your lower abs area. The area below your navel. Just place your right hand there. And as you inhale, I want you to send the breath down the spine and send the breath to where your right hand is. And feel as it expands. So really press the breath down into your lower abdomen. And feel that expansion beneath your right hand. Then as you exhale, you can just press the breath back up and feel the gentle contraction in your lower abdomen. Now we're going to continue to do this, but I'm going to count your breath with you. So continue to fill the lower abdomen up on the inhale and then gently press the air back out. So inhaling deeply for 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhaling for 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhaling deep down, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhaling 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhaling 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Make sure you're really expanding the lower abdomen. Now extend your exhale to 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Deep inhales into the lower abdomen. 4, 3, 2, 1. Slow exhale. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale now for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhaling deep down. 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Extend your exhale now to 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale now for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now continue on like this, inhaling for 4 and exhaling for 8. Remembering to inhale deep down into your lower abdomen. If your mind wanders, that's okay. Just bring it back to the breath as soon as you realize. Deep inhale down into the lower abdomen for 4. And a slow exhale for 8. Now very slowly, I want you to just begin to return your breath to a normal 4 in, 4 out. So in for the count of 4, out for the count of 4. Just regulating your breathing back to normal. And just take a moment to notice the effects that that breath has had on you. Whenever you're ready, you can gently open your eyes. Come back to the moment. I hope that deep diaphragm breathing helped you as much as it helps me. Sometimes if you're not used to sitting and breathing in that way, you know, it can take a while. It's definitely a discipline, you know. As I said, maybe even start off with 1 minute, work your way up over time. Like, it's not something that you have to be sitting and doing it for like 20 minutes to get the effects. You know, you can get the effects pretty quickly, but it's great to do it for longer if you can build it up over time. I hope that it helps you as much as it helps me. It's a great one to do in the morning when you first get up. It's a great one to do before bed. It's also a great one to do just if at any time like you're feeling a bit overwhelmed or a bit anxious. You know, maybe take yourself into another room, sit down and do that breathing for a minute, 2 minutes, just until you feel kind of that nervous system response. You feel that kind of calming, that relaxed state begin to take over. So we leave it at that for today. Again, don't forget to sign up on my website, www.kirstyolive.com. I will, if I can, write it in the description of the episode for the podcast, so you can go in there to get the link to the website, or you can just type it in on your browser, and sign up for my mailing list to get some free anxiety resources sent directly to your inbox several times a week. And if there's anybody who you know, who you feel might benefit from some extra support and some extra resources, give them this podcast episode, direct them to my website if you want to get them to sign up. I'm going to be doing a lot on this over the next while, as you know, I just want to be in service to you guys, to you goddesses, everybody. I want to be in service to my people, my tribe, and this is the calling that I'm getting at the moment. You know, this is the ask that I'm getting from everybody, is to help with anxiety. So I'm going to be doing a lot more on this over the next while. So sign up and keep an eye on your inboxes. And also, you know, get in touch on social media, by email or whatever, even through the website if you want to. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to know how you found the podcast, and if you go on to try any of these things that I mentioned and just how they work for you. But apart from that, thank you so much for joining me on 11:11 with Kirsty Olive. Namaste.